What's up guys, Chris here, and in this video we are going to be talking about weapons in NieR Reincarnation. Basically everything you need to know when it comes to using weapons and upgrading weapons. We're going to cover everything from the very basics for beginners and then also cover some advanced tips and tricks that can help you clear higher difficulty content and customize your loadouts. If you guys learned something new or you want to add something that I missed, please let me know in the comments section below. Let's jump right in and your hot blitz this thing. The first thing I want to talk about are the three basic fundamentals of weapons. You can see those right up here. That's rarity, affinity or element, and type. And rarity is pretty simple. This is the stars here, and this determines how rare it is to actually pull this weapon when you're doing summons. It gives you a general idea how good this weapon is going to be. In general, 4 stars are going to be better than 3 stars, which are better than 2 stars, etc. Now, one of the most common questions that is asked about weapons is, are 3-star weapons worth investing in, or should you only be focusing on 4-star weapons? We're going to answer this question later in the video, but the direct answer is going to be yes. There are plenty of cases where your 3-star weapons will be valuable. Next is the element, and there are 5 elements in NieR Reincarnation, which you can see here if you tap on this icon. There's fire, wind, water, light, and dark. These are extremely important when building loadouts to beat quests. Fire, wind, and water have a rock, paper, scissors relationship. So fire is strong against wind, which is strong against water, which is strong against fire. Similarly, light and dark are going to be strong against the opposite element. But what does strong actually mean? Any attack made against an enemy that is weak to the element will do 50% more damage, or 1.5 times damage. And you'll see this weak text displayed above the damage numbers. In addition, your character will take 20% less damage from enemies they are strong against, which you will see with this resist text being displayed above the damage numbers. Of course, all of this works the other way around if you are attacking with an element that your target is strong against. So obviously, it is very important to consider element when you're building your loadouts. You can always see the element of an enemy by looking at the portrait in the top left. For almost all of the early game content, you will be better off using elemental advantage over weapons that are higher level, higher rarity, and sometimes even matching type. As a bonus tip, whenever you go into a quest, almost always there will be a mission right here at the top that tells you what elements to use in that mission to have the best chance at success. For me personally, I have a loadout set up specifically for this. To do this, tap this loadout button here, scroll over to an empty loadout, and then what you do is rename this something like element, which we'll do that now. Change, and I do this just so I don't screw up my other loadouts. Once you've done that, click this auto button here, and then you just choose the element you want. So for example, if I want a loadout that focuses on the wind element, you choose the wind element, and it's going to put in weapons and companions and all this other stuff that focuses on the wind element, as you can see here. Now, the auto loadout system isn't perfect, but it is a pretty quick way to equip your best team for a certain element to beat certain quests. Well, that was a handful, but the elements are one of the most important factors when you're building loadouts. Remember guys, it does 50% extra damage to use the correct element. Now, before we talk about this type here, I want to talk about the stats really quick, and these should be pretty self-explanatory. As the level of the weapon goes up by using this enhanced tab over here, the force, HP, attack, and defense will go up as well. Attack makes your character do more damage when they're attacking, defense helps them resist damage, and HP increases how many hits they can take. Force is kind of an arbitrary value assigned by the game to give you a general idea how strong the piece of equipment is overall. Given how much space we have in this box here, I imagine we could eventually get weapons that increase other stats as well, such as agility, critical rate, and critical damage, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So now we can talk about type, and this is simply the type of weapon it is. So is it a one-handed sword, a two-handed sword, a spear, staff, fist, or gun? Basically, each character has a primary weapon type that they use. When you're assigning a weapon, you can quickly identify matching weapon types by this flashing red diamond over the type icon, or by using the sort function down here to sort by the weapon type that you're looking for. Okay, so now it's time to pay attention, class. When you're building a loadout like I'm doing here, if you're using a weapon that is not the character's weapon type, the character will only get half of the stats, or 50% of the stats that are listed on that weapon. In addition, when you're using weapons that are of matching type, this is really important, your character will have a chance to do additional attacks when they perform their basic attack, which can greatly increase your damage. So it should go without saying that you should almost always try to use a weapon that matches the type of your characters in the primary slot, regardless of the stats or other benefits your weapons might have. Now the next thing is these secondary loadout slots, and the stat rule will apply when you're assigning secondary weapons as well. So your secondary weapons will always apply 50% of their stats to your character's stats, which means if we use a weapon here that is not of matching type, we're actually only going to get 25% of the stats, because half of 50% is, well, you guys get the idea. Last thing on stats, and this one is for the math nerds out there, the actual amount of stats that you're going to get from a weapon won't match up with what you see here, because that would just be too simple. It can increase based on hidden values from a weapon's rarity and ascension level, as well as the character's rarity and ascension level. This info isn't actually useful for building your loadouts, but if you do notice that the numbers don't quite match up with what you're seeing, this is probably why. Okay, finally now we can talk about skills, and these are basically the abilities that your characters can use during battles. The skills that your characters have access to will be entirely dependent on the weapons that they have equipped, plus the one character skill that comes directly from the unit. While all of the characters are different, you can make any character a healer or an attacker by assigning them weapons with those types of skills on them. The abilities that they can use will be the first two listed here on the weapon, and note that a character will only be able to use the abilities that are on their primary weapon in their loadout. The exception here, which isn't exactly clear in game, is these passive abilities down here listed third and fourth on the weapons. Even when a weapon is equipped as a secondary weapon, these passive abilities will apply. So if we go back to our loadouts here, for example, on my 2B, if I go to assign a secondary weapon and I look at Lars' Blade of Judgment here, you can see it has the Fleet Foot ability, which increases agility of the unit that has it equipped. If I go back to my loadout screen here, you can see as I select this weapon, it will increase the agility of my 2B because it's taking advantage of that Fleet Foot secondary ability. Passive abilities can be a major factor that affects how good a weapon will be for a character, and oftentimes, especially in the early game, assigning secondary weapons with beneficial passive abilities can be better than looking for weapons that have a matching type. Ideally, you'll want to build up weapons for your top characters that match their weapon type and have beneficial secondary abilities for that character. Now let's talk about ascending and evolving. Ascending is basically a way to increase the level cap on a weapon, which in turn increases the maximum stats and the level caps on the skills for that weapon. The ascension level of a weapon is shown by these diamonds right here just under the name. To ascend a weapon, you either have to use a pearl, which will differ by the rarity of the weapon that you're ascending, and these are going to be limited in quantity, so you probably don't want to be too liberal in using these, but the more common way is by pulling duplicates of the weapon. One common question about 4-star weapons and duplicates is whether or not you should combine them or use them as two separate strong weapons. My personal philosophy is that building upwards, not outwards, will always be better, so you should probably just combine them. Now, I could potentially see the case for leaving them separate so that you have multiple strong weapons of a single element and type, just in case you're running multiple one-handed sword characters, for example, but eventually your account will plateau in power, so in the long run, combining the weapons will always be the better choice. The final thing I want to talk about is evolving weapons, and what this actually does is it increases the rarity of a weapon, so you can make a 3-star into a 4-star, or even a 4-star into a 5-star, as you can see I've done here with Lars's Windsword. Evolving a weapon will further increase the level cap of the weapon, increases the multipliers on the stats, obviously giving you more stats, and finally, and maybe most importantly, will unlock the second passive ability that a weapon has. Evolving can be crazy good for weapons, but these gems that you use to evolve are super limited. They do drop from some daily quests, but the drop rates are pretty low, making them painstakingly difficult to earn. My advice would be that anytime you see these in event shops, you should almost certainly prioritize picking these up when they appear. And now that we've covered almost everything when it comes to weapons, we can answer the question about 3-star gear. Is it worth investing in 3-star gear, or should you simply focus on 4-star gear? Well, the answer here is pretty easy. Yes, 3-star gear can not only be viable, but a lot of times it can be much better than your 4-star gear. Given that you probably have, like I do, tons of duplicates for these 3-star gears from event shops or just from pulling on summons, their level cap will immediately be higher than a lot of your 4-star gear. Add in that you can evolve 3-star gear into 4-star gear, and it almost becomes a no-brainer. Some of the top teams that I've seen so far are using the 3-star event weapons from NieR Automata, like this one right here, fully ascended and evolved into 4-star. Now, this doesn't mean you just go full Leo in Wolf on Wall Street and just start throwing everything you have at 3-star weapons, because it does take a lot of enhancement items, evolution gems, and gold. But if you're having trouble grabbing duplicates for your 4-stars or gathering the correct elements and types for your top units, and you have 3-star alternatives sitting in your inventory with plenty of duplicates, it's really not a bad idea at all. Anyways, guys, that's it for this weapons guide. Let me know again in the comment section below if you guys have any questions about anything we covered in this video, or I left out any pertinent information. Note that in this video, we didn't even talk about these dark weapons, because that's a whole nother subject to talk about when it comes up. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next time.